Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, the man who talks to machines will give you some more in-depth information, research, and wisdom. One of the things that has been brought to the general public in recent years, and it's been quite a few years actually, and it has proliferated, and it seems to be slowing down a wee bit, but the use of a so-called orgone to empower all sorts of things, little pyramids, and they put these things in radionic machines, etc. Particularly the interesting areas by the Satanist Karl Hans Welz, who died very young, and who brought his orgonite to the public, a powdered orgone accumulating substance, or so he stated. Now, everybody's under a misconception as usual, including myself, who was under the impression that Wilhelm Reich was actually treating people for illnesses, and he was curing them of different diseases like the Big C. Well, this couldn't be further from the truth. Now, he did do research in these areas, particularly with the Big C. And every single person, and it's documented. He did document things well. That's part of doing research, is documenting everything you're doing. That every single one of these people died. And of course, we still have the ridiculous statements from people, the manufacturer even of orgone accumulators you sit in, or the ridiculous things of putting it in a tiny little box, or even the more ridiculous thing of making a tiny little pyramid. And of course, all these people that are making this junk that doesn't work are all people that have never read Reich and have never understood how to make a proper accumulator. Now, first of all, you can never generate orgone. But there is a secret that has been revealed of what may be the frequency for orgone, or at least makes sense that it would be that. Now, when you accumulate something, you're condensing it down and condensing it out of what is orgone. Orgone is the energy in the atmosphere. It is not coming from humans. It's coming from the atmosphere that keeps everything alive and energized. And of course, you're part of that. This could also be equated with the actual Schumann resonance, that particular frequency of 7.8, or you could just basically say 8 hertz. So it's always comical to see 7.8 like those. That matters. And of course, the Schumann resonance varies dramatically as well. It does go up and down depending on where you're at and everything else, but generally it falls in that category. But if that's the life-sustaining energy, that again is basically generated or built up or is created by the atmosphere, then we're talking about very similar energies. And it means that if you really want the effects of orgone, you would then have a 7.8 or in that area generators that you use. And we use these for in all of our equipment, and we find that it does give a little boost. We don't find that it is a very strong energy. But it is a clearing energy. It has been stated by many people that all of those people, from hunas to psychic healers, pretty much you name it, anybody who's doing higher consciousness work, that they go into that 7.8 frequency. So there's something to this, but just producing 7.8 by itself doesn't really manifest much of anything. I consider it a clearing energy, an opening energy, but you can use all the 7.8 you want as a manifesting energy, and it will not work. But it will help you, and you have to use other technologies with that. And that goes for a lot of things out there that are amplifiers, geometric patterns, the things we've seen for years, in many different ways. The multi-wave oscillator antennas, all these things are energy forms that but don't manifest by themselves. You have to use them with other things. They're kind of amplifiers of your manifesting energy. So I hope people understand that. But the bottom line is that there is no evidence that Orgone, by Rife himself or anyone else, has assisted in the healing of anyone. A matter of fact, most Orgone researchers, including the famous James D'Amato, who recently died of cancer, did not in any way use Orgone to cure himself, obviously. And obviously it doesn't work. Now, D'Amato did have on his property an entire room, or actually you could call it a little cabin, that was an Orgone accumulator box. It had boxes inside of it. The whole house, I believe, had some structure of being an accumulator unit. And this was something that he used and others did all the time. Well, obviously, it didn't save his life. He was diagnosed with the big C and in a few months apparently died from it. So it just shows that certainly this is not a panacea for health in any way. But Rife himself and all the other researchers that came after him are stating, improperly, and I'm not sure if you can call them researchers, that this helped. And Rife himself said that he had a lessening of the size of tumors and other things, and that people felt better. But, this is comically absurd. If these people were getting better, they wouldn't have died. And they did. He didn't stop. He didn't get the big C to reverse, or at least stay in a particular state of not getting worse, even though he claimed that he was getting results. Again, this is confused information, and this is a real black mark against Orgone researchers and Rife himself, who seems to be very confused of what's going on there. Now, having people sit in these things thinking what's going to happen and so forth, well, he was very much into psychology and mental processes. I'm not sure if all this got very confused. When you start moving into the physical, you're getting into a whole nother realm. So there's absolutely nothing that Orgone or Orgone accumulators, and of course they're made in a very particular way by having layers that are put down of organic and inorganic things. You have to do it in a way, you don't put it in a little pyramid. He said not to use aluminum and not to use copper. These were toxic, yet everybody did all that stuff. But I've tested many of these little pyramids and other, and they're all garbage and do nothing. So they're very pretty. I've had several of them. I've gotten rid of all of them because I think they are generating. They're also put in very toxic resins. The resins are poisons. So you certainly are not necessarily good to have. Now, I frankly doubt they emit too much in the air, but the bottom line is that they must be emitting some of their toxic chemicals into the air. The other thing is that people who want to equate Orgone with other things. So what they do is they get a zapper and they put this Orgone junk in it. And then they claim that the Orgone junk, which probably does nothing. I've tested a lot of Orgone, and strong Orgone, that is powdered stuff that was brought on to and victimized the public with Orgonite by Wells, generates very negative energy in general. Negative energy to the point that most people get sick from using it. But these other things are just nothing more than eye candy. They're worthless. They put out no energy fields whatsoever, and they do absolutely nothing. To think that a bunch of plastic resin, and you're going to put in filings of metal in there, oftentimes this metal was aluminum, which is highly toxic, and then adding in some copper and other things, is the absurdity of absurdities. And we get back into the placebo effect. But every time I've tested people, when it comes down to this stuff, they fail horribly. You hear stories after stories, and you see little to no manifestation from any of this stuff. As most people who contact me talk about, I said, ultimately, regardless of what you say about Orgone, the Orgone units don't work. And they don't work, and they never have. The people involved in all these practices are very dubious people that have made a lot of money and are directly connected to Satanist and criminal activity. We have people out there, again, that are saying, now, if you put orgone into a zapper, which is being done by Don Croft people, another guy who's died from the effects of orgone by muddling his mind, who must have been a Satanist because he knew he was good buddies with Carl Wells and had no problem doing whatever Wells told him to do and perpetrated a very evil, negative energy, saying that the fact that they were getting results, and what is even said today by his organization is that those people claim from the zapper feedback that they are getting people stating they're being cured of everything, but they can't say that for legal reasons, obviously. But the fact that you're going to get results from those zappers, which I have tried as well, is absurd. Now, if you are getting any kind of results from it, and if enough people get stuff with a placebo effect, they claim to be healed. When I go in and investigate and look into it thoroughly, were they ill and were they actually verifiably cured? Well, mysteriously, you can never prove it. But when you combine two things together, what actually worked? Well, we know there's something to the zapper technology, at least to a degree. This is something that's been used for years, and of course, these different frequencies started off with Rife, and then they went into other people used it and started the zapper craze. Hewlett Clark, who was selling thousands of these, and of course, herself died of cancer. So her website states. In her middle to late 70s. So again, she didn't live all that long, and she didn't actually die young either. But the point is, she died of cancer, which is something she wrote 2 books on the cure of cancer. This is what happens all the time. But the point is that if anybody got any results from these orgone zappers, they were getting it from the frequency that was being put into them, not from this ridiculous orgone, which makes no sense whatsoever and doesn't really put out any energy of any value. And secondly, if it does, if it's made very strong with certain ingredients, it's very negative energy. And this is what orgonite produces. So these people continue to poison the population with this kind of things and claim this is happening when there's no proof that it is. And the only active energy in a zapper is the frequency that's in the zapper, which usually there are several. And then there are ones that have a catch-all frequency. Well, I found that none of these things work very well personally. But if you like to have them as placebo effects and maybe you've gotten some results, well, more power to you. But don't think that this is really a technology or an energy. It really isn't. And it's in no way is it safe. The literature states by the discoverer and namer of orgone, the sexually driven Wilhelm Reich, is the fact that it didn't work. And making somebody, I feel better, the world is nicer today. Well, these are not things that are judgeable. These are very subjective by the person. Well, I feel better today. Of course you do. You're in a positive mood. You want to survive. So you go into one of these boxes, these accumulators, whether it's a room or a box, and you're psyched into the fact and thinking while you're in there how much this is helping you and how much it's going to cure you. The bottom line is that from Reich himself, none of these things ever worked. And I don't think we can say they felt a little better. And the fact that there were so-called improvements that he marked down, yet the cancer killed the patient, makes it ridiculous to think that anything was happening there. So certainly, whatever improvements, which again I feel is very subjective, the bottom line is, as most things in life, is does it work or does it not? It kind of worked. It's close. Well, there's only one thing that close counts in, or 2 things: horseshoes and hand grenades, people. Being close when you're healing is not good enough. Yeah, they were improving. Yeah, the operation was a success, but the patient died. So the whole idea is these are the kind of nonsense we get into. Now, the fact of putting goop like this, which is totally unsubstantiated, and we can certainly substantiate that it puts off huge negative energy fields based on subtle energy physics, is provable. Does it do anything? Well, the inventor himself, Carl Wells, and his wife died very young, and so did many, many other people using his toxic technologies. And it continues today. None of these people are healthy. Nobody is doing well. This is complete nonsense. So you're using toxic junk. And the fact is, it doesn't kill you instantly is unimportant. We don't need more toxins in our environment. And the Orgone, and particularly Wells, was screaming all the time, bodybuilders use this, martial artists use this, and it's making them so much better. Well, it didn't make his wife better, who died at 70. Well, the point is that is pretty pathetic age to get to when the average life expectancy in the United States, with all the drugs, garbage that Americans are exposed to, average life expectancy is about 77 now to 78. So none of this is doing anything. And Rife himself, who wasn't really very health conscious, he was a chain smoker, he was overweight, he certainly didn't take care of himself or exercise, certainly didn't. And so the whole idea, all that sitting in these boxes and all the other people around him that did it right up to modern times with James D'Amato, did nothing. Now, the only part of Rife's work that has any value is the cloud busting, which seems to be very potent. And the new person taking over from D'Amato doesn't want to share any of this technology, or thinks that nobody should know how to do it, apparently. This kind of censorship is really obscene, especially coming from alternative people. He stated this on an interview recently, that when someone even showed a photograph of a cloudbuster, he said, "You shouldn't do that. I would never show a photograph like that because I don't want people using this." Well, thanks for the research. I hope nobody gives the new Orgone Foundation any dimes at all. Pennies, nickels, or nothing, baby. These people are already off on a bad tangent. But this is the kind of stupidity we have in alternative science as well. But putting any kind of particularly non-traditional made orgone, which is still a great question, because what the orgone different materials, I don't think D'Amato knew anything when it came to accumulators. They also get all caught up in the sexuality that Rife was talking about, and I think these kinky little scientists get off on that. As one researcher stated, it's fun walking around campus with a book stating orgasm on it. Is there? Are you in kindergarten? Well, they really are, and of course, these people don't really have much. They're typical scientific types that are certainly don't have a great sex life, I would say, or whatever. It's amazing they even get married or anything else, but apparently all these people do. But the bottom line is that, as I said, that's what a top researcher into Rife stated. Well, as I said, what a kindergarten viewpoint. So I think a lot of people get caught into that, and they think somehow there's something in Rife's writing that will attract a bunch of nymphomaniacs and somehow give them fantastic sex, where none of it does that. Releasing emotional blockages, which is really what Rife was talking about, that he considered to be caused mostly by sexuality, I think is a childish viewpoint as well. Life is a lot more traumatic than just sexuality. What about all the kids that beat you up as a child, the wars you go through, the murder, the food you eat that is murdered, like particularly meat? All this means nothing to him. It's all in his crotch, and it's really kind of a boring way to look at things. But all of his books are online, and you can read them for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And while I do believe sexuality is a strong force in life, I think ultimately it's for those who have too much time and too much money, as they used to say about cocaine. Cocaine, if you're a cocaine addict, it means you have too much time and too much money, which is so true. So the whole idea is that if you were going to put orgone into any kind of dialing unit, radionic type unit, you would have to make it more traditional. You'd have to make a layered box, as Rife described how to make these. And this would then generate, and we're not sure because orgone energy is so easily toxified. The atmosphere, if you're condensing it from a very polluted, very toxic atmosphere we have now with all the nuclear power plants that are leaking and all the other things, if you're condensing energy from that, you're having a real problem. The one thing nice about using a little 8 hertz generator is these generators tend to generate pure energy. And while it releases into the atmosphere, that tends to toxify it to a degree, it's generating energy, not accumulating it. Very important, and that's the key to people who want to have devices that work better. All of our tools, we put these 8 hertz generators in, and it gives a whole clearing and a whole boost to the process. It is not a manifesting energy, it's a gateway energy. So we have to understand that. But if you're going to use Orgone, you're certainly not going to use it in this bizarre powdered way with all the stuff in there and this black Orgone powder that's in there. And I'm pretty sure I know what that is. And what they're using is stuff that was talked about by Rife initially. The problem is it's very negative stuff, and it is accumulating very negative energy, which is basically what this entire environment is about. But if you were to use it, you should make, and if you think you're big into all this stuff, which I wouldn't recommend, but you would make an Orgone accumulator box in as many layers as you want to. I mean, Rife went as high as 100 or more. And this would then accumulate the energy, not using a bunch of powders mixing stuff together. This becomes a very strange reality. The bottom line is that shouldn't work, and it doesn't work because you're not picking up Orgone, you're picking up this kind of evil demonic energy that this Wells guy was into. And I knew Wells personally and threw him out of my organization many, many years ago because of his evil satanic ways, which I was unaware of when I originally basically even went into business with him. And of course, he cheated and lied with everything with that and didn't even have a penny to help the business. But that's old news. The bottom line is that these realities that we're all looking at of what you can do with Orgone have to be totally re-examined. It has no healing capacities. There is no benefit to it. And sitting in an Orgone accumulator and then you saying you felt better from it is great. That's placebo. And if somehow that translates into taking care of a problem you have, well, more power to you. But we can't in any way equate that it came from this energy, which by the person who invented it, who built the machines, stated it was worthless for this. We have further follow-up. Not only that, throughout James D'Amato's literature and reports and other people he worked with, there are several instances, particularly one instance of a college professor who was working with cloudbusters who was too sick to go with his students out to work with the cloudbuster because he was dying of cancer. The point is that we pretty much have irrefutable evidence that Orgone, at the very least, is worthless. And I tend to think that Orgone accumulators are dangerous. We certainly know if you start messing with that, but I don't know how we can call orgonite or these junk out there that is put into plastic. Well, this isn't really Orgone at all. You're not really using Orgone because you're not accumulating it properly. We know how you have to accumulate it properly, and nobody wants to do that because it's too much work. They want to make little paper holders for your desk of clear little pyramids with stuff in them. And I must say, a lot of them are very attractive, but they produce no energy at all. I've tested them. I've tested large ones. I've tested small ones. There's nothing coming off of them. It's nonsense. And if you're using any kind of copper or other things, and we tried this years ago, even myself, because people thought it was so great, it did nothing. And copper is toxic, as is aluminum, as Wilhelm Reich stated himself. So, if you're going to make something and label it, well, stay with it. It wasn't that. Wells was playing off that term to trick and confuse people like the Satanist belief system he has. But it was nothing at all like that, and nor is anything unless it's built like a traditional accumulator. Putting powders together, combining it all, this is not going to create the kind of proper Orgone that you're seeking to get. It has to be layered properly. And what layers of what you use? Well, this is in great contention. Rife himself used a whole different bunch of layering material. And this has even changed more and more as we go through it. I'm not sure that D'Amato knew what he was doing with layering material at all. Just because you're a researcher and have dedicated your life to this pseudo-sexual pursuit doesn't mean you really get it. Now, the point is that cloudbusters are pretty simple as well, and we don't really know the effects of those either. Is standing next to them and being in contact with cloudbusters healthy? Well, we don't know. But certainly they seem to work. There's an awful lot of data stating that they do. D'Amato did a lot of it, other people did. But the point is, we still need an awful lot more done here to prove that technology, because we have a very thirsty world, and this could do amazing things. But the problem is, it's a great, giant, powerful tool, meaning the fact that you can control things. So if you think that they're going to let this happen, where you can go to places that are literally thirsting for water, and use this technology, which is so easily copied, and you're going to get rich from it or even assist people, well, I think that's a naive way of thinking. We live in a very corrupt world, and they're not going to let you do this. But apparently, D'Amato claims that he was hired by certain countries, which he couldn't release. Again, these scientists that do stuff and then they allow themselves to be kept under secrecy is pretty obscene, and it's a crime against humanity. Now, if they're doing it strictly for money so they can survive, well, that's kind of an excuse. But of course, that's what we've had in all of the occult sciences, the psychic sciences. We've had this for 50 years. And of course, nothing ever comes out, and it never, ever will. We can see that with the recent interview of Hal Puthoff on Joe Rogan. This guy has stories from 70 years ago, and it will continue to give you the same stories, and doesn't really seem to get it or really know anything. But certainly they're not going to talk about anything, being the little cowards that they are. And of course, when you work with the devil, you're going to have to follow the devil's rules. So the whole idea is that's the reality of all that. So if you're going to use an accumulator properly, well, build it as it is supposed to be in layers, as the discoverer, inventor of it to a certain extent, Wilhelm Reich did. Don't toxify everything with your reality of these stupid things and saying, well, this is curing disease, when it's actually cannot be connected to that whatsoever. This was another trick done by, when you put two things together like this is a trick done by a lot of people who are just tricksters and money grabbers. The Advanced Tachyon Society did this. We're testing tachyons with, I forget what green drink they were testing it with. And this green drink was empowered by tachyons, and they were getting healing from it. No, they were getting healings from the green drink. And if people watch their diet, drink things like that, they tend to have a much higher healing energy in them. It has nothing to do with the tachyons, which the tachyons that these people make have such low energy, it's comical. You're much better off using our tachyon discs. They have more energy by 10 times than these little glass things that this guy claims does. Not to mention his nefarious backgrounds as well. So we have all sorts of problems with these people and their connections and what's going on, and basically how much money they want to make. And that's really what it's all about. But to say that tachyons are healing somebody when it's actually this green drink that has all these vitamins and minerals in it, and most likely you're losing weight, most likely you're exercising because you're going through this, and to equate that tachyons helped it is a state of stupidity that's laughable. Same thing with zappers. It has nothing to do with that junk that's in there. As a matter of fact, it may be hurting the process, that it doesn't empower things properly, because the orgone interferes with that. It's not real orgone. It's some sort of crappy energy that we have no idea. We do know that it is all negative. When you make these type of powdered junk, what you're doing is creating negative energy. And if you do it to an extreme, it's super negative energy, as happened with orgonite. Very toxic substance that none of us need. And if we're going to go by the fact that orgone is supposedly something that boosts our immune system and helps us heal, well, this has never, ever been established. And Wilhelm Reich specifically stated this. But again, we have people even to this day that claim that this is helpful, that it gives you a good boost. What do you mean gives you a good? For all we know, orgone grows all sorts of illnesses within the human body, that it amplifies it with the toxins of it. Certainly, there's only one measuring tool that you can when you're doing something, trying to heal somebody of some serious deadly illness, and that is were they healed or not. What do you mean they got? How do you judge somebody as getting a little better? What does it matter if something is decreased in size? What does that mean? What does it mean that you're using this and of course you're positive and say, yeah, I feel a little better. Of course you feel better. You're trying to survive. That's the placebo effect, and I've went through this thousands of times. When I take something, I'm very positive about it. Yeah, it does seem to be working. Yeah, 2 months later, that was money down the tube. So the whole idea is this is what we have to understand. So all of this is a fallacy. We need to move past this. Now, I think that Orgone is fascinating. I think there may be a way to filter and purify it. I've tried this myself with some degrees of success, but I don't see it as an energy that is strong enough to do anything. I have figured out how to access myself with my new scalar tools pretty much to do anything, and these will be released in the coming months, where you're going to see some amazing things happen and manifesting and everything else, which we've already been testing for quite some time. But there doesn't seem to be much to this at all. But since we don't have any other ways of making rain except seeding clouds and doing things that have been done for years, most of that has stopped. There was a few amazing rainmakers in the past, but with the fact of a very thirsty world that we have right now, and areas that were great producers of food, which now can't because they don't have the rain, we need this kind of technology. But don't in any way think it's safe to get a cloud buster and use it that way. We don't have any idea of the energies these things put out in general, but we certainly know that users of Orgone and Orgonite in particular don't live long and die. Many of them get cancer. And this, again, is proven as it's written throughout James D'Amato's literature as well. So we just don't know. And of course, the new people taking over from D'Amato think that cloud busting is something they're going to ignore and keep from the public. So we're not going to really know anything if whatever their research means anyway. I don't consider that guy very intelligent. From listening to him, I don't really get anything from him whatsoever. He's another guy. It's sex. So the whole idea is that that's what he's talking about, which is ridiculous. But of course, Rife is tied to that and always will. Rife was persecuted because the FDA at the time, and the very conservative, most likely religious person running it, considered Wilhelm Reich to be a sexual deviant who was promoting promiscuity, and he wanted to crush him. It had nothing to do with anything coming from healing. I hope everybody knows that. That's the facts, and that can be found. It's not complicated. You'll get that from any Rife researcher, or you can read it in his actual... And Rife wasn't too bright either, the way he went to court to try and do things, particularly at the end. Now, unfortunately, Rife had just demonstrated the Cloudbuster and was going to move into that area when he was harassed and then arrested and put in prison and couldn't really continue his cloud-busting research at any level. So that's what happened there, or probably would have had a lot more happen to that. But I'm sure there's a million legalities you can get into with cloud busting, because everything's illegal if they want to, that we have to look into. But the new people that have taken over, at least in that particular area, have no interest in pursuing that whatsoever, and it's really a shame. But that shouldn't stop the individual. If you're interested in this, you certainly should be researching it, building your own models, and then seeing how it works for you personally. Just be a little careful. This is a tricky energy, and we're not really sure what Orgone is, how it works, etc. But we certainly can come up with something that is similar, and we know the frequency of it. It's 8 hertz. And this is something that even if you have a cloudbuster or a smaller one like some people have, is that you should have a 8 hertz generator next to it, or the cloudbuster should be on top of it. This should improve the use of it. And that goes for anybody using Orgone, but you can't really call anything out there Orgone. These little comical things, and the Orgone Institute of Africa, where they carried around a little keychain of this garbage because it's so cheap to make, is comical. It's not doing anything for anybody. These are nothing more than little psychic placebos that work at a very low level for very short periods of time. This is the way all these things go, and I've tested them for over 50 years now. So it's important for everybody to understand that, to know what orgone is. If you're going to, does it have any use in radionic scalar type machines? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't. And if you have a little unit that you can make, well, you can try putting your machine on top of that, not building it in. This seems to be another thing that is not a good idea, as I've just mentioned. Well, you could. Well, if you're an orgone fanatic, you could make an orgone accumulator box and then put dials on it and see what it does. I mean, but the point is that it doesn't produce any kind of serious energies to assist manifesting, period. It doesn't help healing. It doesn't help manifesting. It helps nothing. Now, Reich had a whole program of psychological treatments and movements to clear out the blockages in people that that assisted people in clogging what we could call, in proper terms, the meridians, so your energy doesn't flow well, which then tends to promote sickness. But to think that all of the diseases in the world and all problems in the world are caused by the lack of sexual fulfillment is this is just the height of stupidity. And of course, that's what he believed. And of course, that's what got him into trouble with others, particularly a society that is so sexually confused and has problems with it on every level, which hasn't changed much today, which added in from outside influences as well. The entire world has their own little viewpoints in this in every culture. But there's really nothing there. People should move on past this. And I will update these things to find out what the reality. But if there's some way to make an accumulator that you could filter the energy, you would have an energy field, although while very weak, would be, I guess, a positive field if you did it. But there's so many other things to empower your particular machines with and to use in general. I don't know why you'd want to use such a weak and pathetic energy like orgone, except for what it proves to be very potent with, and that is with cloud busting, which apparently seems to work and work well. This has to be researched and proven, and that's really the only area of Reich study that has any value. And the fact of sexual problems and everything else I feel it is something that is very dated, and yeah, we all know that's part of life. But we find this to be a little bit ridiculous to think that this is the cause of all problems in life. As I've said from day one, the cause of all of our problems, as long as we have slaughterhouses, we will have battlefields, as someone said. I'm not sure who said that, but that's something I like to go. The bottom line is we keep thinking that it's okay to abuse, torture, and murder certain things in life, and then we expect to treat the rest of the populace good. Well, this is absurd. It's animals today, it's them people there, it's they got the wrong skin color, it's they got the wrong sexuality, they have the wrong whatever. This is how things work because you're allowing the destruction and murder is okay in a framework. This is the appalling problem that we have. And until that ends, we will not be a good society, period. Until next time.